Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dhammapariyesanā. Today is day 31. In today's discussion, we'll be discussing an eye-opening topic, which has been discussed for some time, but there are different discussions and different levels of discussion going time to time. The topic is how to deal with your Asian immigrant parents. So this is a topic where a lot of people discuss behind the scene, but I think we would like to discuss that, in this kind of a discussion, especially in our Dhammapariyesanā discussion. So I invited a guest for this discussion. What my plan is to interview him and sort of discuss the main elements of this topic, as well as to give some tips, suggestions how we can improve a good relationship, a healthy relationship between parents and children. It's my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, who is Calvin Huang, who was in Toronto, but now he's based in Indonesia. He's doing his own business and he has been there. I hope he kind of stuck with this COVID-19 situation as well. Calvin earned a BA in business management from the University of Ottawa here in the city, Canada. And he decided that after working for a few employers, he wanted to work for himself more. So he decided to start his own company, which goes by Indo Watch Guru. Some folks, you can look it up on Instagram. Type in Indo Watch Guru in case you want to buy a luxury watch at a good price. So I guess what he's doing is he is buying these luxury watches and then he is reselling and kind of stuff. I hope that he might say a couple of words about that too, because he's a good entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Calvin. Calvin, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Calvin, the topic for today's discussion, as you know, by how to deal with your Asian immigrant parents. And I know you were born in Toronto, and you went to high school in Burlington, in the suburb of Toronto, and you were living pretty much your time in Canada, and your parents, they come from Indonesia. I think they are Indonesian Chinese uh, people community, right? So,
Yes.
so uh, I think you are a perfect person to talk about this thing. So let me think about a background about this discussion. So our relationships, especially when it comes to relationships like you know people like you, uh, especially you and your parents in common, they are not always rainbows and sunshine, right? There are some situations that happen, escalate time to time. But we know that although there are some minor or major issues, but the relationships have been improving over the years, in different ways. So it looks to me that they are kind of like ongoing improvement journeys, and there is no one place that you feel that this now it's perfect. And you might perhaps say that you might get along with one of them better than the other one. This happens to many, uh, you know, Asian kids. Also, you might come up with some of the thoughts that you are someone like a realistic optimist, and the opposite is one of your parent. These are kind of things that might come up. So we also want to say that there are parents who really take care of their kids too, right? We should not ignore them. So because parenting is such a big thing, so we have to respect them, because I know there are a lot of parents who've been taking care of their kids, but the issues come up at a place where parents are those who have migrated at a certain at a certain age of their life, and then kids were born in a Western country like in Canada, in your case. So that's the kind of one type of parents we recognize. On the other hand, there may be parents who have their kids in their Asian countries for some time, and they are not migrating that soon. They might migrate after some time when their kids grown up. At least they mean 20s or late, young time. So there are this way couple, like two kinds of parents. Of parents who migrate to Canada when their kids were not born, and their kids are going to be born in Canada or in a Western country. And there are parents who migrate with their grown-up kids, right? At the same time, there could be kids who were born in here, who were born outside of Canada, uh, you know, in their early time, but they migrate before they become adults. Or there may be kids who might be born outside, spend a lot of time, and come here. So my first question to you, Calvin, is that how do you figure out these connections, these different sets of parents and kids, children, so that we can have a good, you know, good place to start this discussion about. We have to first understand who these parents are, who these kids are, so that we will find out how to talk about how to deal with parents and kids.
I think in terms of improving a relationship, both parents and the kids, it's like having any other relationship with a friend, in an intimate relationship. You're always working on it. So um, in terms of building your relationship, it does take time. It takes it takes a lot of understanding between the two of you, and that's some things that like a lot of parents, regardless the race, I guess, but I guess towards more in the Asian race, it's something that like a lot of parents and the kids have to work on because, especially growing up from a family when my parents immigrated to Canada, their mindset was completely different. So um, from that being said, it did take a lot of years for us to like get on the right path, and no, it wasn't easy, but for sure it was worth it because at the end of the day, I think having a good relationship with your parents is the most important thing.
Have you heard about tiger parenting, which is a concept coined by a professor at Yale University? She's a law professor, and she was writing a book about tiger parenting. Parenting means a form of a strict code, like a strict form of parenting, like wanting to have their kids study well, live up to their expectations, and so much and so forth. Her name is Amy Chua, Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. So, what is your perception about this tiger parenting? Especially this is supposed to have in Asian type of parenting, So, what do you think about this kind of a parenting? And did you go through this kind of parenting as well? Did you witness?
I mean, I've heard the phrase before, tiger parenting, but in terms of going through it, I don't think my parents were so strict in terms of raising me and then wanting me to, because I do know some parents, the stereotypical Asian parents are like, we want you to become doctors, we want you to become a lawyer or other professions like that. But my parents, towards they were more towards being like, we want you to do what you want. As long as you go to school, you graduate from school, and you just make us proud, then whatever makes you happy, and honestly, whatever you're able to sustain your lifestyle with, then by all means, like leap towards that. So in terms of tiger parenting, like yes, my parents were strict, but not strict to the extent where you always hear, okay, my parents didn't let me do this, didn't let me do this. No, like anything that I wanted to try, any sports, in terms of like even all my friends and stuff. A lot of my friends stayed over, and in terms of like the Asian culture, a lot of people don't believe in that because in Asia, most of them think, why would your friends stay over if they have their own house? So it was kind of, I guess it was kind of a mindset that my parents changed, but it took time too. But thankfully, because my sister was born earlier in Canada too, so they might have had more time to adjust that mindset.
Yeah, interesting. Uh, Calvin, we forgot about one other category of parents. I mean, I would say uh, Asian immigrant, Asian parents who were born in here, in Canada or another Asian country. So, I mean, the way that they kind of take care of their kids and the connection that they have there with their kids could be different. I guess it's more streamlined with what we witness in this mainstream society. But we are specifically talking about how to deal with an Asian, uh, you know, immigrant parent, especially being on the side of a kid, a child. So let's talk a little bit about issues at hand. Now, one of the things that I also heard from many kids when I took some opportunities to advise, guide some of the kids who were born in here, maybe who were born outside, but they were pretty much assimilated into this culture, was that uh, the communication issue, right? So parents think in a different way, and kids think in a different way. Maybe their life perspective also attached to this thing. So, would you care to share with us some of like particular incidents where parents and children can have some of disconnections when it comes to conversations, topics, areas of life, maybe daily chores at home, so on and so forth.
So I think a big part of it growing up for me, I think, was miscommunication. So in terms of, because I was born in Canada, so my mindset was a certain way, and then my parents' mindset was a certain way, and also a big difference is because of culture differences. So in terms of how someone would speak to you in Indonesia compared to how someone would speak to you in Canada, some people might think it was like harsh, but for Indonesians, it's very normal. Um, so for me growing up, I went to school, and then I always thought in my mind, I was like, why don't my teachers speak to me that way or something? But my parents do. But it wasn't the fact that they were coming from a bad place. It was just more so that that's how they grew up, and I never understood until the older I got. And after time, then I came back to Indonesia more often. Then I was like, wow, everyone speaks like that here, and it's not in a harsh way at all. It just takes time to kind of understand each other. But in terms of communication and understanding what each other thinks, yeah, it takes a lot of time. Um, like I said, even us with our relationships with our friends and our loved ones, we can't always like understand what they're thinking. So communication is key. Um,
But what are the things behind uh, not understanding each other by ways of communication? What lead them not to understand each other by communication?
I think it's the mindset. So my parents were born in Indonesia. They only came to Canada around the 1990s. So they were already in Indonesia for about almost, I think over almost 30 years. So for someone to grow up in that culture in a certain mindset for 30 years, it's not so easy to change. Sometimes like I see myself and I'm already 24 years old, and sometimes I can't even change my own mindset, let alone my parents. So it took a while for me to understand, because for me, growing up in Canada and coming to Indonesia, and now I've been here for already a year, sometimes I think to myself, and it's kind of difficult because when you put it into perspective, it's like we bring our Canadian culture into Indonesia, and can we think like those people? And that's how I view my parents. So I think around the age of like 15 to 18 was the hardest time because it was a time that I was growing up and I also had my own thoughts, but it was also the time that my parents were, um, they didn't really understand what I was going through because a part of the Indonesian culture and I guess Asian culture is that family comes first. And family, no matter what, every single day, or I guess usually every single weekend, we always eat together as a family. But with me growing up, during that time, all I was thinking about was, oh, okay, I want to go out with my friends. So in my parents' eyes, they never really did understand, okay, why does he always want to go out? Why does he want to never spend time with the family when they grew up, the only thing they did was spend time with their own parents and siblings. But I guess over time, the longer they stayed in Canada, the more they understood, okay, this is how the way of life here is. This is how the society is. And it's not that they have to accept it, but it's more so they learn to accept it.
So someone might say that, let's say, one of the parents land in a job in a European country, right? It's not an immigration. So the parents are moving to this European country with their kids, and they know that they are not going to there for more than 3-4 years. It's a job, like 2-year contract job. So, the situation that we see in that account, I don't think that the parents would like their kids to assimilate into that European culture, right? And if you take another scenario, somebody like one of the parents are migrating to Canada, one other Asian country, European country, and they want to make that new place as their home. And then what would you think, how better they can, bring up their kids? Should you think that they can follow kind of a mixture of the both cultures, and how best can they bring up their kids? I mean, as a as an idea, towards parents who might be watching this thing. Should they assimilate the whole Canadian culture by ignoring their roots, or should they bring in the whole Asian culture that they were with to this one and ignoring the whole new country culture? What would you think about it?
So with me growing up, I know a lot of Asian parents because I also have a lot of family friends, and a lot of them don't know how to speak Indonesian. I think compared to me and my siblings, we speak quite fluently, and that's because from a young age, our parents taught us like we should be speaking Indonesian. And I actually never understood why, because they said most of the time, 90% of the time, you're at school, you're speaking English. So whenever you come home, then just speak Indonesian. And growing up, I'm actually like, I'm very thankful because being able to come to Indonesia, I actually don't feel left out. So if anything, I feel like, oh, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. So when you ask me about two cultures mixing in also, I think it's I think the best idea is to always learn from both cultures and never just to take one side because such as school, if we're learning about a subject, it's better to learn about everything rather than just one certain subject. So to learn about the various cultures and to being able to take like the good in both cultures is the most ideal situation because obviously both cultures, for me, like Canadian culture and also the Asian culture, they both have flaws. So for me, the best idea, yeah, is to take the best from both of them and then being able to try to accommodate yourself and see how you fit the best. But I think two cultures is better than one because it gives you a more educational understanding and it makes you understand each other's culture. So when you go to like different countries, you're not culture shocked.
True.
Yeah.
You know what? There's something interesting too. Like when the parents are trying to choose one or the other, and at certain time of the kids' time, they also want to choose one or the other. So I think this prevents them communication, right? For example, I know there are kids who really want to be choosing one culture over the other culture, so that they are missing out on their their rich part, as you said, right? So I
Yeah.
think we have to address these two categories. Like parents, you should not forget about your roots, but you should have a nice mixture, nice blend of these two cultures when you are bringing up your kids. For kids, children, you should not forget about your roots, but try to assimilate at the same time, keep your identity. This is what we're talking, right?
Yeah,
This is
so for everything, there is a perfect balance. So before, I used to go out all the time. And for my parents, it's like I said earlier, they said, so why aren't you always at home? So it was just finding that perfect balance of going out, spending time with my friends, but then also giving my family and my parents the attention. Um, yeah, a lot of like especially my parents, the most important thing for them is family and also enjoying time just with the family. So that's why usually for Christmas, big events, especially for those times, my mom always has said, once you guys are married, no matter what, we will always spend Christmas and New Year's together. And that's something that like we grew up learning. And yeah.
so we identify communication is one of the issues when it comes to understanding Asian immigrant parents for Asian immigrant kid. The another thing that we need to understand is life perspective. I mean, this is one of the very biggest deals, you know, in a young, kid who is trying to starting out, right? So, what do you think about the clash between this life perspective? Parents have a different life perspective that they want to instill, and I mean, this happens because there's no good communication. But so, and
Mhm.
and the child is looking at this new country, and then probably they may have taken the kid to the Asian country too, but still the child is having a hard time in figuring out,
Mhm.
the life perspective. Now I know there are some arguments that can happen in such families. Parents call other people, especially in different ways, and kids are really in this culture, so they don't like father mother talk to those people this way, and they say this is racism, this is classism, this is sexism. Dad, you don't talk like this. Mom, you don't talk like this. We should respect them. So this all talks about there is a big clash between life perspectives between parents and children. So what would you think about this clash, and what would you think as a solution?
I think um, I think over the years we've debated through this a lot, and through the clashes between both of us, we both realized that at some point um, there has to just be an understanding. So, for example, when I first started university, actually a year before university, I really didn't want to go to school at all. Because in my mindset, I already knew, okay, I want to be a business person. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to start my own company. Actually, in fact, I wanted to work for my dad at the time. But uh, as parents, they're always. I see it in a Western society type of manner, and it's kind of okay if my kids don't want to work, it's okay. But usually at 18, they're doing their own thing. But um, but in terms of our culture, it's kind of at 18, you better go to school, and then after you're done school, then you get a job because it's not that parents expect their kids to take care of them, but it's my responsibility, and that's just how I grew up. So that's my mindset. So in terms of these things, there, I think I argued with my parents a lot about going to school, about doing what I wanted to do, and obviously they disagreed. But thinking about it in the long term, am I really thankful for finishing, for going to school and having a degree? 100%, because we don't know what happens, and maybe one day I don't have a job, maybe one day my business isn't doing so great, so there's always a backup plan. In terms of like these clashes, yeah, it takes time because you have to understand from both sides, and it's two different perspectives of how our parents think and how we think as kids. But yeah, with that being said, I think the proper key to everything is just communication, like the right communication.
Hmm. Do you think that by communicating Kids can persuade their parents not to be so, and especially, I mean, I'm talking about a darker side of how they see the society. Maybe it might be right in their countries to
Yeah,
to
yeah,
to see that way, but
yeah.
that is one thing. And you're of course a fortunate being, right? Your parents let you
100%.
come up with your own perspective, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope the communication, respect, trying to understand, each other will be a good way about the life perspectives. Also, Calvin, let's talk a little bit about spirituality, religions, and
Mhm.
spirituality. Now, this is a big kind of a deal when it
Yeah.
comes to, you know, clashes between parents and kids. And some kids, they say that they're trying to indoctrinate us, but some parents are really liberal and they don't try to push kids to one religion, although they come from a Buddhist background, Christian background. They let them choose what they want to choose. Um, and also, I know, like in my understanding, some parents want their kids to come to temple, but they don't like it. Maybe they say
Mhm.
temples are not like you know they are not having a bad view about temples, but they feel like it's boring for them. It's a
Yeah.
different issue. Maybe temples are running on very conservative, mechanisms, rather than tapping into the modern spiritual trends that they can
Mhm.
see in movements, right? So like mindfulness kind of stuff. So what would you think about this clash when it comes to religions? I don't think they are not against the spirituality. Spirituality is such a common thing. We all have a spirit, like the spirituality point of view. But also, some children they like to respect what their parents are doing. Some children they are really kind of atheists or agnostic or
Mhm.
uh, non-religious kind of people.
Yeah.
So how do you see this thing, and how is the impact of kids on this particular thing? Their,
So
their,
I
their parental views about religions and spiritual, and how they handle this thing with them.
yeah, so I think so I was actually I'm a born Catholic, but during one point in my life, I think around 15 to 16, I became sort of an atheist. Not completely an atheist, in which sometimes I still do go to church, but I think I was such at a confused state in my life. And towards like 18 and 19, my mom always asked me, okay, hey, let's go to the temple, because she's Buddhist. And every Saturday we would have Chinese school, and then after Chinese school we would go to the temple. But after a certain while, I felt, rather than being given the choice of, hey, do you want to go to the temple, I felt like, okay, hey, no, we're going to the temple. And I feel like maybe that's not how it really was, but in my mind it was. And that kind of like changed my mind of, okay, I don't want to be forced into a religion. I don't want to be forced into having to choose something that I'm not even 100% certain with. And after a while, I think when I was in university, then I went to go see you. I was more like freely minded, because I was kind of, I was kind of able to willingly to go and see you myself, instead of being put in a position of, hey, like, why aren't you going to the temple, or why don't you come with me and stuff. And yes, like, I call my mom almost every day during university, so sometimes she would say, have you gone yet, have you gone yet. And for me, I would go whenever I felt like it was right to go, or whenever I felt like, I just didn't want to feel the stress of not going, type of thing. But I think, with that being said, it took a while. I mean, sometimes like we would get in a fight about this, not about the religion itself, but mostly just because of me not wanting to like follow my mom, or sometimes she would just want me to go with her, not even because of going to the temple, but just to keep her company. But as kids, like sometimes, like you said, sometimes going was boring and stuff. So after I was in university, after I lived by myself and I was able to have more time to think, after I went, I liked it. It was very like peaceful. It gave me a lot less stress on my mind, and I believed in. I believe that there is a higher power, and that um, and that's something that no one can ever push onto you. It just takes time for you to realize yourself, I guess. Yeah.
And this is also something that leads to relationships when kids, immigrant kids make connections, relationships to other people who could be, racially different, and
Mm-hmm.
and how their parents look at it, or even in the same ethnicity. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what would you think about, kind of a balance or kind of a well-being of the thoughts that parents may have, parents can develop in them, to look at what their kids want to do in terms of their relationships? Do you do
We're
you
talking.
identify some of the issues with relationships when it comes
I,
to that?
I think I think that I think it depends on various cultures. So in Indonesia, is such a strictly Muslim and Chinese culture, where I think around 95% are Muslim and 5% are Chinese, and they're usually um, they're usually very persistent on either you're marrying the same culture, or your other half is also follows the same beliefs. And most of the people here, that's how they are. So with my parents growing up, and I know how my grandparents grew up, I can't blame them because they grew up. This was like in the 1900s, where um, my parents, they were from like a small city. So especially back then, when my parents were when my parents just met each other, a lot of the times it's okay. You had to either date or marry the person from the same culture. So I think that they took that upon themselves to think the same way, and that's something that we can't blame them, because, like I said, that's how they grew up with. Um, I think after 20 years, or yeah, after 20 years of living the exact same way, it's hard to change someone's mindset and mentality. So in terms of relationships, I have had quite a bit of fights with my parents over relationships, over just being able to meet in the middle. Because the one thing I'm understanding growing up is that our parents, like, they always say they want the best for us, but I think sometimes how they show they want the best for us is different than how we perceive it as kids. But at the same time, for us kids, we obviously want to marry or date someone who we think is um, the best suitable for our parents, and who would get along best with our family. So sometimes that's why there's a balance between everything. And I think the hardest problem to face now, and it's still an ongoing problem, is that whether or not we communicate with our parents, or whether or not we get through to them, that's something that's still an everyday challenge and a battle. And um, if you ask me how to deal with it, I think everyone deals with it differently, because like I said, I've experienced like my friends trying to communicate with their parents about it, but it also hasn't worked out 100%. Not meaning that, oh, okay, their parents won't talk to them or anything, but just in a way where they won't ever meet eye to eye. And that's something that's very difficult, because I think in our culture, Asian culture, even the Middle East culture, that's something that's it's a very strong belief. And so hopefully, I guess hopefully moving forward, parents will be able to realize, oh, okay, hey, our kids, like our kids live for themselves. They also have their own mindset, and I think as kids, growing up, we're also going to know what's best for us too. And as long as there's that communication and that there's that trust between parents and kids, it should be okay.
What do you think about the interracial relationships, marriages that we can see in as a trend, like you know marrying from the same ethnicity and marrying from different ethnicity? I think there are some some issues when it comes to parents when they get to know that my kid is dating, you know, a non-ethnic person from different from their ethnicity sometimes.
Mhm.
So there are times that their kids are, dating, having a relationship, or marrying from the same ethnicity without any issue in their own, jargon. But sometimes they want to go for interracial stuff. So what would you think as a whole about this thing? Would you think that this is something they should be really like in Indonesia, and you said that they are really they're kind of adamant about their own ethnic, maybe
Mhm.
religious beliefs when they want to get married, not just their parents, but even themselves, right? They themselves, they are really, thinking that thing. But when it comes to a kid like you, like a millennial,
Mhm.
so how would you see that thing? Do you think that parents should let their kids think about these things differently or similarly with their views? Should we how does a kid manage these things, you know?
I think it's quite hard to manage. I think as time goes by, I think we saw from what 10 years ago, for example, how the LGBT community is compared to now. It's a complete, it's completely different. It's
Is
completely
there a
different.
community in this country?
I guess everywhere around the world,
No,
honestly.
no, I
Just
mean Indonesia.
Yeah, so in Indonesia back then, and also in a lot of Asian countries, um, if you were caught, it would be punishable.
Yeah,
And in some countries, it would even be punishable by death.
yeah.
But in Indonesia, it's grown to another level of where, for example, where I'm from, the LGBT community is so great that but the problem is that no one wants to admit it, and it comes to that level. And I don't think I'm only talking about myself, but in a lot of strict countries too. But with that being said, I think over time we've seen that that's already evolved. And so in terms of like culture and accepting other people's culture, that should also evolve as well. We can't always live in a mindset that, okay, this is how it should be, this is how it was back then, so this is how it should be now. Because in a certain way, life is always evolving. The years are getting longer, so we have to go along with the years, or eventually we just fall behind. Um, if you ask me, obviously, I don't think I agree in terms of the way Indonesia does it, in terms of they're very persistent on you have to be marrying the same culture and stuff like that. Because I've seen so many of my friends and so many people that I've known, they've married people from different cultures and different races. And at the end of the day, it's what works best for you. If I know in a lot of Indonesian cultures, in the Indonesian culture, for example, if you're a Muslim and you marry a different culture, for example, like a Chinese, then most Muslims expect the Chinese to be converted to Muslim. But I guess uh, for every single situation and scenario, it's different um, because it also depends on the couple. It depends if you accept it or not, whether you're happy. But it's something that the couple should choose themselves and not the parents, because at the end of the day, it's them living together. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So before I jump into the next question is about how to, find out good tips, or what are the tips that the kids can follow to deal with their parents for a healthy relationship each other. Let me talk a little bit about some of the things that arise, that pop up in the minds of kids. Now we understand that sometimes it's hard to agree, to their parents, because it might be because they come from different generations, upbringings, cultures, languages. But this should not tell kids to think that they can change their parents, or maybe they can find a healthy balance between
Mhm.
each other. Kids always think I deserve to be supported in pursuit of my hopes and dreams. This is such a feeling
Mhm.
that they are having all the time. I
Yeah.
deserve to have my opinions validated. I mean, a lot of times their opinions are not validated because saying that you are too young, too small to think this way. So there is a validation issue. I deserve to be treated as a peer during difficult conversations, not shut down because I am too young to understand. Sometimes they don't intervene. They don't involve their kids to decide on some difficult things. So
Yeah.
so kids are not happy about it. I deserve to have the courage to be vulnerable with my parents, sharing with them who I am without being judged, ridiculed, or belittled. Right? So this is another way of expressing on the side of kids. I deserve to learn from them, and they deserve to learn from me. I don't think that doesn't work to many because parents
Yeah.
don't think that they should learn from their kid, especially their Asian immigrant parent. But I think there are parents who wanted to learn. Um, I think a lot of Asian parents they learn English at some point from their kids
Yeah.
in a different way. But I mean, attitudes and not saying that the kids know everything while
Mhm.
kids learn from their parents. At the same time, parents should also think that there are things that we can learn from our kid, especially when it comes to stereotypes, sexism, different phobias,
Mhm.
classism, those what do you call different other things when they look at people outside jobs. I deserve to get to know my parents, and they deserve to get to know me. Well, I mean, that's what we can see at the end of this whole conversation. So now, my question to you at this point, Calvin, what are the healthy ways that we can that kids can overcome these clashes, issues, problems with their parents? If you can name a couple of them and then delineate a little bit about that particular issue, and this is the solution, that would be great.
I think nowadays a lot of kids, for example, I did this at one point when we just didn't click, and we had such a different mindset that um, there's some things that I did that I would hide from my parents, and when they found out, if anything, they just got even more angry, and in my mind at that point, I thought to myself, I'm like, if I tell my parents what I'm actually doing, then we're just going to also come up to an argument. So I guess it's hard to think from when you're in that point of view, because sometimes anger takes over you, frustration takes over you. So the only thing you can do is try to calm yourself first. Calm yourself, and then there's always a right time to talk to parents. And maybe you won't get through to them the first time, and maybe you won't even meet halfway or even in the middle, but at some point, this is something that I learned growing up, and something that I learned actually just this year. But parents love their kids more than anything. So no matter what, even though they might not show that they want the best for you or anything, their intentions are always the best for you. Um, the only solutions that I can give is uh, be patient with your parents. Don't get so frustrated all the time, and communication and telling them what your plan is, what your views are, and also maybe talking to them about what their views are. I know growing up, my dad's views from when he just moved to Canada compared to his views now have completely turned 180. And that's something that not a lot of people can do. Not a lot of people's views change, even though they've moved to a country after a certain while, because their culture is so ingrained in them. But I guess what we can do as kids is also try to, as you said, educate our parents. And by educating them doesn't mean telling them,
Advise
hey,
them,
like,
trying to advise them.
yeah, I'm not trying to advise them, but for example, if your parents have a different mindset or the wrong mindset, then um, you could try to show them, or just make it seem that, like, hey, even though even though this is how Canadians think, or even though this is a different mindset, it's okay to think like this, and it's okay to be more open-minded. Yeah.
Mhm. So what you said was calmness at the face of any issue, and then
Yeah.
don't get frustrated because frustration, anger, they take us over. So when someone is calm, uh, okay, I wanna say something before that. So if you or your parent has a mental sickness, or you are currently being abused, please seek professional support for yourself, because we are not talking how you can solve that problem. In
Mhm.
addition to encouraging your parent of what we've been talking. So we're talking about some mild situations. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
mild
mild
situation.
situations are not like extreme situations. So if your parent is having that, or you having that, so this is not the right place. You have to seek professional support. But when you are calm to understand, especially as you delineated about understanding how parents think, they are if you think they are very conservative, you can understand how better you can bring in your liberal thoughts, liberal perspective
Mhm.
onto them, so they will be happy to accept, rather than saying that you are wrong and this is right, and this is where the conflict happens, right? And also
Yeah.
you said. Mhm.
Oh, sorry. No, no. Yeah, and also, it doesn't take one day to change someone, and you should never expect yourself. You should never expect to change your parents, but you should expect to be able to communicate with them better, so that you're able to understand each other more. But at the same time, it's not fair for parents to expect you to change, and vice versa. So communication is key. Being open-minded and loving your parents unconditionally, no matter what. My parents always say this, and it's very true. We only have one parents, and they can't. You can have ex-girlfriend, ex-wives, but you can't have ex-parents or ex-kids. And that's something that's very true, and that I hold dear to my heart. So
Mhm. So one of the other things that I always talk about it. What's one thing you respect about your parents? I mean, which is kind of a good thing to start off,
yeah.
respecting, and then to be happy with what we already have. Calvin?
So I respect so much of my parents, and they came from such a poor background, coming with nothing, and coming from an undeveloped country just like Indonesia, and they were able to move us to a better place, um, give us a way better life than what we would have had here, honestly. And because of that, I think it makes me want to work just um, even harder to prove them that I can also be successful, and that um, they're not really that they didn't just make the move for no reason. Also, um, I think I think also another thing is that no matter I think right now at a certain age, my parents they're at a time where they should retire, and they don't need to work at all anymore. But instead of not working, they're so motivated to keep on finding new ways on how to expand their business, make it more sustainable and stuff like that. And that's something that's not easy for people at their age.
So,
Um,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So respect, communication, calmness, uh, taking time. Don't try to change them, but trying to persuade, educate them in a kind way. Also, I think we can uh, wrap up a conversation with this question: what elements of your parents do you see in yourself? Are there any things you would like to change? Because we don't try to now. Someone can think that kids are right and parents have the problem. We are not saying that. This is
Yeah.
kind of a win-win situation, at some point. So
Yeah.
trying to see that we also, like, kids also have a role to play here, right? So
Yeah.
what do you think about kids who don't think they want to change also for their parents, right? So what's your piece of advice to them?
Um, I'm saying you shouldn't change how you are as a person, but I think in most scenarios, us kids, we're very similar to our parents, whether we like it or not. We are their kids, and we do take a big part of who they are. So we don't have to change ourselves completely in order to fulfill what they want us to be. But I think the three main things are to always respect your parents, to always love them, and also treat them well. Treat them well as if when I say treat them well, as in for me, my mindset and my mentality is that I work hard so that one day I'll be able to take care of them, because they've taken care of me my whole life. And without my mom, I wouldn't be here. Without my dad, I wouldn't be able to live this good life. So at the same time, we have to appreciate what they've done for us, but we don't have to change who we are. We just have to know that no matter what, at the end of the day, there's only two people that we should always be owing for our whole life, and that's our parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at our parents without, confining the importance of them, while looking at some of the issues and then overcoming them calmly and then happily. Thank you, Calvin Huang, for sharing with me and with our friends these insightful, elements of this conversation. And this is such an interesting topic, and you sort of like brought that topic to an eye-opening level. Thank you, Calvin Huang. And Calvin Huang is joining with us from Jakarta, Indonesia. He's from Toronto, but now he's living there for some time. Hopefully, he's back to Canada sometimes in the future. Dhamma folks, thank you for watching episode today, episode 31. Stay tuned with us. We'll be seeing you with another episode soon. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good day. Thank you.